I never planned to fall for him. James had billions in the bank, but his soul was bankrupt. When our worlds collided, he thought I was just another conquest. Little did he know I'd be the one woman who wouldn't be impressed by his wealth, only his heart. I never wanted to fall for a billionaire. That wasn't in my life plan at all. But here I am, telling you the story that changed everything for me, and for him. My name is Zara, and 3 years ago I was just trying to keep my head above water in Atlanta. Working 2 jobs, teaching art to elementary kids by day, and bartending at this upscale lounge by night. My apartment was this tiny 1-bedroom in a neighborhood that real estate agents would generously call up and coming. But it was mine, you know. Everything I had, I'd earned through hard work and determination. Growing up in a family where money was always tight taught me what actually matters in life. My mama raised 3 kids on a nurse's assistant salary after Daddy left, and she showed me that real wealth isn't what's in your bank account, it's what's in your heart. We never had much, but we had love, laughter, and each other's backs. Those lessons shaped me into who I am today. Then there was James Kincaid, the kind of wealth that makes regular rich people look middle class. Private jets, multiple homes across the globe, a fleet of cars most people only see in magazines. His face was on business magazines, his name in headlines. He'd built a tech empire from nothing, and now, at 38, he had everything money could buy. What he didn't have was anyone who saw past all that, anyone who cared about the man, not the money. We met on what should have been a completely ordinary Tuesday night at the lounge where I worked. He came in with his usual entourage, executives, yes men, and models who laughed at all his jokes. I was covering an extra shift, exhausted from teaching all day, when he ordered a specific bourbon that required me to climb the ladder to reach. When I brought it over, he barely looked up from his phone, just another invisible service worker in his world. But then I spilled his drink. Not accidentally. I simply placed it down harder than I should have, and bourbon splashed onto his custom suit. The entire room went silent. His security stepped forward. His friends looked shocked that anyone would dare. But instead of the explosion everyone expected, he looked up, really saw me for the first time, and laughed. Not a condescending laugh, but a genuine one, like he couldn't remember the last time someone hadn't treated him like he was made of glass. That moment, that collision of our worlds, sparked something neither of us expected. Stay with me as I share how this unlikely connection unfolded, how a woman like me, who grew up with nothing, showed a man who had everything what he was actually missing. This isn't a fairy tale about a rich man saving a poor woman. It's about how authentic love can break through the walls we build around ourselves, no matter how thick or how expensive those walls might be. If you've ever felt that money and status stand between you and genuine connection, this story might just change how you see love, wealth, and what truly matters in the end. I grew up watching my mother stretch every dollar until it screamed. Our dining table discussions weren't about vacation homes or investment portfolios. They were about which bills could wait another week. But we had something money couldn't buy. Unshakable bonds formed through shared struggle. My siblings and I learned early that your word and your work ethic were the only real currency you could count on. James lived in a completely different reality, born into upper middle class and then skyrocketing to wealth in his 20s. When his software company exploded, he existed in rarefied air. His morning started with personal chefs preparing his precisely calculated breakfast, while assistants briefed him on the day's meetings. His decisions impacted thousands of employees and millions in capital. People agreed with him, not because he was right, but because he was rich. When we first started talking, really talking, at the lounge after hours, the gulf between us was so vast it was almost comical. He complained about his interior designer misinterpreting his vision for his Aspen home renovation. I'd counted that my landlord had finally fixed the leaking ceiling after 3 months of calls. He'd look embarrassed, then curious. It was like watching someone discover a parallel universe existing alongside their own. What fascinated me about James wasn't his wealth. It was how lonely he seemed, despite being constantly surrounded by people. Everyone wanted something from him: investors, partners, even friends. He didn't trust anyone's motives, and honestly, he had good reason not to. The world treated him like a resource to be mined rather than a person to be known. I think what drew him to me was simple. I didn't need or want his money. When he offered to solve my problems with his checkbook after our third conversation, I looked him straight in the eyes and said, "My problems aren't for you to solve, and if that's what you think this is about, you don't understand me at all." After that night at the lounge, I thought I'd never see James again. Rich men don't typically return to places where their ego gets checked. But the next week, there he was, alone this time. He sat at the bar, not in the VIP section, and asked for me specifically. When I approached, there was this awkward tension hanging between us. He ordered the same bourbon, and I made sure not to spill it this time. "I've been thinking about what you said," he admitted, twirling the amber liquid in his glass. "No one talks to me like that anymore." I shrugged, wiping down the counter. "Maybe that's your problem." Over the next few weeks, he kept coming back. Sometimes we'd talk for hours after my shift ended. He'd try to impress me with stories about celebrity encounters or business deals worth millions. I'd counter with stories about my students' artwork or my sister's new baby. Slowly, I noticed him leaning in more when I talked about my life than when he talked about his. One night, he offered to drive me home in his ridiculous sports car that probably cost more than my entire family had made in a decade. I declined and took the bus as usual. The look on his face, confusion mixed with something like respect, told me he wasn't used to rejection in any form. "You know I could buy you a car," he said the next time I saw him, half joking, but not really. "And you know that's exactly why I wouldn't take it," I shot back. What James didn't understand yet was that his money was actually a barrier between us, not an advantage. Every time he tried to solve a problem by throwing cash at it, he created distance. I wasn't playing hard to get. I was trying to show him that real connections aren't transactional. Something was happening between us, something genuine, but only when the billions weren't in the room with us. The first time I saw James truly vulnerable was 3 months after we met. He'd invited me to dinner, not at some exclusive restaurant where he could show off, but to his penthouse where he cooked for me himself. Terribly. The pasta was overcooked, the sauce too salty. It was the most endearing thing I'd ever seen him do. "When's the last time you actually cooked for someone?" I asked, trying not to laugh as he frantically fanned the smoke alarm. "Never," he admitted, running his hand through his hair. "The chef usually handles everything." As we sat eating his disastrous meal, something shifted between us. He started talking about his childhood, growing up with parents who measured love in achievements, never affection. How even now, with all his success, he still felt like he was chasing their approval. "Sometimes I wonder if anyone would care about me if I lost it all tomorrow," he confessed, staring down at his plate. "I would," I said simply. The words surprised us both. Our values still clashed constantly. He couldn't understand why I wouldn't let him pay off my student loans, or why I insisted on splitting the bill when we went out. "It's just money," he'd argue. "It doesn't mean anything to me." "That's exactly the problem," I'd counter. "It should mean something." I challenged him to volunteer at my school's art program, to see how the other half lived. He showed up in designer clothes, clearly uncomfortable, but by the end of the day, he was sitting cross-legged on the floor, helping kids with their projects, his expensive shirt covered in paint. Later, he confessed, those kids didn't care who I was or what I owned. They just wanted me to see their art and be present. That was the day I realized James was beginning to see the world through different eyes, my eyes, and I was starting to understand the weight of privilege he'd carried his whole life. The turning point in our relationship came on a rainy Sunday afternoon. James had planned an elaborate date, a private jet to Paris for dinner. When I refused, suggesting we just stay in and watch movies instead, he was genuinely confused. "Why wouldn't you want to go to Paris?" he asked, perplexed. "Most women would be thrilled." "I'm not most women," I replied, "and I don't need grand gestures. I need to know who you are when all the fancy stuff is stripped away." We ended up at my tiny apartment, eating takeout Chinese food and talking until sunrise. For the first time, there was no performance, no power dynamic, just two people sharing their fears, dreams, and truths. He told me about his failures, not just his successes. I shared my deepest insecurities about never feeling enough in a world that often judges Black women more harshly. "You've shown me that I've been measuring success all wrong," he admitted, his voice quiet. "I have everything society says should make me happy, but until I met you, I wasn't." Of course, not everyone understood what we saw in each other. His business associates made thinly veiled comments about my intentions. My friends worried he was just slumming it, that I was a novelty that would wear off. The tabloids were cruel, suggesting I was his charity case rather than his partner. But in private moments, when it was just us, none of that noise mattered. We'd found something rare, a connection built on seeing each other's true selves rather than the labels society had given us. One night, after a particularly brutal article questioning our relationship, he took my hand and said, "Before you, I thought happiness was something you could buy. Now I know it's something you build together, day by day, choice by choice." That was when I knew what we had was real love, the kind that transforms you from the inside out. 6 months into our relationship, James made a decision that shocked everyone in his world. He stepped back from day-to-day operations at his company to focus on what he called human-centered innovation. He launched a foundation dedicated to arts education in underserved communities, inspired by my classroom. The business press called it a midlife crisis. His board members thought he'd lost his mind, but I saw a man finally aligning his actions with his heart. "For the first time, I'm using my resources to create something meaningful," he told me, eyes bright with purpose. "Not just another product people don't need, but something that changes lives." I watched him transform from someone who delegated compassion through charitable donations to someone who showed up personally, rolling up his sleeves in community centers we established together. He still had his billions, but money no longer defined him. It was simply a tool to express his values. The change in me was quieter but just as profound. I'd always carried this chip on my shoulder about wealth, assuming money corrupted everyone it touched. Through James, I learned that privilege itself isn't the problem. It's what you do with it that matters. I challenged myself to think bigger about my own impact, eventually leaving classroom teaching to direct our foundation's educational initiatives. We moved in together, not to his penthouse, but to a new place we chose together. A home that reflected both of us. He learned to do his own laundry. I learned that accepting help didn't mean sacrificing independence. What we built wasn't perfect. We still argued about money sometimes. Cultural differences still tripped us up. But we'd created something neither of us had experienced before, a relationship where we could be fully ourselves, flaws and all, where growth wasn't just encouraged but expected. "You didn't just show me real love," he told me on our first anniversary. "You showed me who I could become when I stopped hiding behind my wealth." Looking back on our journey, I'm still amazed at how far we've both come. James and I come from worlds that were never meant to intersect. Him with his billions, me with my teacher's salary and big dreams. But sometimes, the most unlikely connections are exactly what we need to become who we're meant to be. Today, our foundation has opened arts programs in over 50 schools. James still has his wealth, but now it serves a purpose beyond accumulation. I still push back when he tries to solve problems by throwing money at them. We balance each other that way. People still judge us. They see a black woman and a white billionaire and think they know our story. But they don't see the late-night conversations, the compromises, the way we've both stretched beyond our comfort zones to meet in the middle. True wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in how deeply we connect with others. If my story has taught me anything, it's that authentic love doesn't care about bank accounts or backgrounds. It sees the person beneath all those labels. So if you're watching this and wondering if real connection is possible across divides of wealth, race, or experience, yes, it is. But only when you're brave enough to show up as your genuine self and love someone for who they truly are, not what they represent.